Hi everyone, this is Grace, and today I'll be walking you through how I made this Hanukkah set of 8 different designs. So let's go. Starting off strong, obviously, with the menorah. Now, I just want to say this is the second time I've made a Hanukkah set. I did one 2 years ago, continuous line drawings, a very different aesthetic, also on my YouTube, and I just wanted a refresh with very different designs. All right, to the cookies. So, all of these cutters came from Brighton Cutters. It's her Hanukkah set. I really love it. They're really simple designs, which is right up my alley. And I will admit, I was a little intimidated by this menorah because it's a lot of candlesticks, or arms of the candelabra. Is that the right way to put it? And I was worried they were going to crater. So, first up, we are doing a 2 consistency outline and flood with this whole set. So that's what I'm doing here. I used a soft peak piping consistency to outline, and then I am flooding with probably a thin flood. Now, this kind of shape, I would definitely do I would definitely do 2 consistencies because all the little scallops at the top there, they would probably just get lost a lot more with one. I mean, you could do one, but just a sidebar. Right, okay. Focus, Grace. The white here, I did color with white food coloring to make it a nice bright white. Now, this will be one of the few floods you see because in an effort to make this video as efficient as possible, I do take out some of the floods because I prefer to talk through the whole video, and there are only so many floods I can talk through because it's basically the same information over and over again. So take advantage of this gorgeous, beautiful flood here. All right, we're gonna let that just barely crust. That is the most important part here for this next step because we want to prevent craters. And when I say just barely crust, I mean 15 minutes, maybe 20 to 30, depending on the environment you're working in. It should be smooth, but a little tacky to the touch, if that makes sense. You should be able to put your finger on it without having icing adhere to it and without immediately poking a hole in it. Obviously, you can't put any pressure on it because you would poke a hole, but that's kind of the idea. Because I don't know the science behind this per se, but something to the effect of when doing a second layer, if you do it on top of a flood that is not fully dry, it will dry together and not create craters. When you do it on top of a flood that is fully dry, something about the dry flood and then the top layer trying to dry separately promotes craters, something to that effect. So the candelabra arms here, I'm clearly freehanding these, but if you wanted to do some sort of mark with an edible marker, or sometimes with this, when it's a really small space, I will actually use my smallest scribe, my PME scribe, which has a very, very fine tip to it. And I might actually poke a hole, literally, in the surface of the icing just to mark off sections because that's less likely to be seen through the bottom, if that makes sense. If you're going to mark off with a marker, you have to make sure you're completely covering it with whatever icing you're doing on top. But y'all know me, I like to just fly by the seat of my pants. And yeah, I don't got time to be marking stuff off that doesn't have to be marked off. Anyway, I also just have a really steady hand. So there's that. Probably the hardest part of this was actually getting these little spacer things right. I think what it's marking is it's just noting that there's actually a candle on top of the candelabra arms because I chose to make it all the same color, but obviously you could shorten the arms and then add a color or add a different color for the candle, but I wanted to make it one continuous thing because I thought it was really elegant. So you're going to see here that I am not using the squiggle technique to prevent craters, right? Because I believe what is more important is this here is not using a fully dry flood. Obviously, though, you can't do that if you're flooding on, or yeah, if you're if you're doing something on top of a naked cookie. But anyway, we're not there. And you're gonna see when this dries how beautifully puffy all of these arms are. I'm so very proud of myself. So very proud of myself. Okay. What else can I say? Great question, Grace. Oh, so you'll notice that I'm doing the arms separately and like not going through that center bar. And that's because I did that once and found that when I flooded this center piece, it over flooded too much. Or not an over flood, but it was just like a little too voluptuous with the icing when I actually pulled each of the arms through. So that was just an easy way to make sure that it doesn't overflood. Just using my scribe here, when I'm doing a 2 consistency outline and flood, I want to make sure that the flood kind of covers, especially the corners of the outline as best as possible. So that's what I'm trying to do here, but I'm quickly realizing that the icing has kind of already started to crust, so there's not much work I can do with it, but good enough. And then I believe this is a soft peak to do these little teardrops, which you can get away with a soft peak if you're just doing the teardrop. If you're trying to do like a knit technique, you really need a medium peak because they'll melt together too much. So this here, I'm just piping a dot and then I'm pulling away and I'm releasing pressure as I pull away. And this is a type of pressure piping. And then I let that dry. Look how nice and crusty, how puffy this is. I do also have a dehydrator, which I pop this in immediately to the dehydrator for like 10 to 15 minutes. Here I'm using the Sugar Art Sterling Pearl in Wedding Gold mixed with their color solution, or you can use Everclear, which is just like a high percentage alcohol, clear alcohol. And there we go. That is the Menorah. Love it. Okay. This one might be my favorite cookie from the whole set, and it is a lot of other people's favorite cookie. So many people were like, oh my God, how'd you do that? It looks like pretzels. And I'm really amazed because this was the first thing that came to mind. I didn't have to think very hard about how I wanted to execute this. So I'm using what was supposed to be a medium peak, but I feel like it's somewhere more between like a medium and a soft peak. But you definitely want something that's going to like keep its shape. So more in the medium peak range. This is the same color that I used for the Sufganyo, which is the jelly donut that I'll show you later. Now, I did do this cookie actually last because this yellow here this is actually a soft peak. Oh, I lied. I'm so sorry. I totally lied. Okay, both of these colors are a soft peak, right? I'm pretty sure. You can kind of see it melting a little bit. Okay, because this yellow is what I used to outline all the other yellow parts, but you can see with both of these colors that the tip is pretty big. So when using tipless bags, I obviously can't just like switch out a tip. So when I'm doing something that needs a larger than normal tip to it, I'll do one of two things. What I normally do is this, where I'll just make sure that I do this cookie last. So I can use like the normal tip size for everything up until this cookie, and then I'll cut a bigger tip for this execution. Or if it's a really big need for something in a set, like I'll actually have 2 different bags of the same exact color and consistency, just with different cut tips. But anyway, I digress. I just want to say here, I do think it's important to do that all in one go, because if you're trying to do this layering once certain layers have started to crust, it's just going to be messy and you're going to get crusty bits. What I'm doing here is my favorite way to make food cookie look like it has like crisped or golden browned, and that is I'm using Americolor Ivory. And I think the first round here, I did thin it ever so slightly, and then I think I go in, do I go in with another? Yes, there we go. Okay. So here is the ivory, just like pure ivory. because I want it to be really saturated because I felt like it was a little too thinned out. And that's how I got it to look nice and oily and crispy. Okay, well, this is the part where I really make it look oily. I am completely obsessed with this. It's Poppy Paint's Super Shine, I believe is what it's called. I'll link that in the description. This is a recent obsession. I do this when the icing and the gel coloring is dry, and I paint this on top. It's dries shiny and it's amazing. It's awesome on top of gel coloring, especially because that gel coloring will often like be tacky, and this completely removes the tackiness. It's so cool. I was gonna say whipped cream. This is not whipped cream. What is this? What is that called? Sour cream. That is a medium peak. You could get away with something slightly softer, maybe a soft peak, but if you want real definition, you need more like a medium peak. Okay, this dreidel here. Very proud of this one too. So also new to me, I did not come up with this, by the way, is to add, I use vanilla bean paste in my cookies. That's what the little black specks are. And I added it to this icing to give it kind of more of like a rustic look. And this is my new favorite way to do at least like a light colored wood. Because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to paint on top of this like the way I would normally do wood. I think I'm going to use the ivory again. I often use chocolate brown from Americolor when painting wood, but this was a much like softer blonde kind of wood. So this color here, I want to say is like a touch of chocolate brown and a touch of yellow, because the chocolate brown makes it too warm. And then I really regretted how thick I made this icing. I thought I made like an extra thick flood. I'm not sure if it was actually an extra thick flood or if it was too thick, but either way, because I didn't want to have craters, and I knew I was just going to be doing this on really small areas, and I only wanted one consistency, so I wanted to rock with the thickest consistency possible, but Lord, this was so annoying to try to settle flat, and you can see I really struggled to like get everything to really meld together. Now I'm using my thickest scribe here. I always have 3. I have this pink one, I have the PME one, which is the smallest one, and then I have a middle-sized one that is like more of a medium-size metal. When you're using a thicker scribe, it's obviously just more surface area to mess with the icing, and in this case, like, I wanted to work as fast as possible to really like settle as much icing as possible, so that's why I went with the big one. And we're just doing a simple flooding in sections here, so letting each one of those sections crust over. Not really sure what else I want to say here. Did I actually sketch that out? Oh my god, I honestly can't remember. I'm having a total brain fart and I was not paying attention. I was just going to say, you can use an edible marker to mark out these sections. Wow, I really don't know if I did. Well, you can tell me in the comments, because I don't know if I'm going to watch it back. I'm on a mission, y'all, to do this voiceover. Okay. Now, I love the simplicity of flooding in sections, but it's surprisingly annoying to execute sometimes, like with this that has 4 different sections. Because of the placement of the sections, I have to do it in 3 different rounds. Thankfully, with this last one, I can do those 2 pieces at the same time. So whenever I'm tackling flooding in sections, I always try to figure out strategically how can I do it in the fewest number of rounds. So like, it would have been really silly of me to start with one of the left or right sides and just did that. Like, I should have at the very least started with like the right and then the top thing. Anyway, I digress. Okay, this here is that ivory again, ever so slightly thinned. And then because I'm not covering that with the shiny stuff, I'm, just to be safe, brushing this when it is dry, basically with cornstarch, just to remove that tackiness. And just note, when you do this technique with cornstarch, it can kind of make the finish more matte. So if you're really concerned about having a shiny finish, don't do the cornstarch. But at the same time, it will prevent having tackiness left over on your bag, which definitely sucks. Okay. The Dreidel lettering. So this is actually from the design of the cutter. So I didn't like come up with this image by myself. And since I purchased the cutter, I have the right to, use the artwork. Okay. So this here is a soft peak piping consistency, and I will just do the outline and then as fast as possible turn that projector off because it's really annoying to flood with. And then just in case, because my flood was pretty dry, I added the little squiggles with that soft peak, and then I'm actually going in with a flood. So I have tried doing this kind of lettering with just a soft peak, and I just find that I really struggle to get like beautifully smooth and nice letters with a soft peak. This is really the best way, the 2 consistency, to get these beautifully puffy, smooth letters. So yeah. In terms of this color, I can talk about that. I wish I had written this down. Boo, Grace. I know I started with a Menorah Royal Blue because that's my go-to blue. And I might have added some electric blue. I also might have added a tiny bit of black. I really should. It's so annoying. I've made this color more than one time, and I never write down what I do. I am the worst person when it comes to colors. People ask me all the time, how did you get that? Number one, I never use anything out of the bottle, straight out of the bottle. And I'm always just like flying by the seat of my pants. So sorry, y'all. Okay. This candle, I just skipped the flooding part. I did those separately. So I did the blue first, let it crust, and moved on to the yellow. That yellow that I just painted was a Menorah egg yellow because I wanted a nice like golden yellow. And I did that pure, so I did not thin that out at all. And that was with a fan brush, one of my favorite easy techniques to do. And then this is a soft peak. I could have done a better job at like smoothing out the drips, but hashtag good enough. Good enough, in case anyone couldn't understand what I just said. Okay, now we are coming in with the pièce de résistance. Okay, so I'm finally actually showing you the bottle here. Yes, it is Super Shine Poppy Paint. Just be careful if your gel color underneath isn't quite dry because it will kind of come off on the brush. Oh, sidebar. You cannot wash your brush with water if you use Super Shine. You have to use vodka or Everclear to clean it off. I just was super lazy and took a few days to clean off my last round of brushes, and I panicked because I thought I'd ruined the brushes, but I just let it soak in Everclear for a little while and it just completely fixed it. So just keep that in mind. You can see here, sometimes I find it better to just like actually drop the stuff on the cookie or on the brush itself. Just be careful because you can very easily use too much of it and then it will like puddle over. All right, this is the Sufganyo, which I already obviously flooded, let that crust. Y'all, this Sufganyo gave me the most trouble. I must have done this at least 3 times, maybe 4. I got so frustrated because I kept trying to do this bare technique before the flood was completely dry. Oh, I was so impatient. Bad Grace, don't do that. I poked holes in multiple cookies and it was super annoying. Yeah, because what you're doing here is you're applying pressure. So it's not like just like icing on top of like piping something on top. You're actually applying pressure. So you really need to make sure that flood is like almost completely dry. If you're a total beginner, I'd let it like basically dry. I know that takes a while, but it'll save yourself. And I just used a flood consistency there for that white because I wanted to have very little texture. And then this is another great trick. I only needed this tiny bit of red. I was not going to make red just for this. So I painted that with the Sugar Art Master Elite in Red Rose. And then I'm putting the Super Shine on top of that, which is so awesome because it's going to retain that shine from the gel coloring. Look at that. So simple, but like so perfect. Okay. I did flood this already, outlined and flooded. Everything is a 2 consistency outline and flood, people, okay? But I wanted to show you putting on the edible glitter. Of course, I had to have some edible glitter for a festive set. So that is the Sugar Art Diamond Dust in gold. I also have their 10K gold, but to be totally honest, I don't really know that there's a huge difference. So get either one. I actually really stressed about how I was going to do this bow because I'm not like a bow person, okay? Some people are bow people. I'm not a bow person. Just accept that, okay? All right. What was I going to say? I was going to say something. Yeah, I don't know what I was going to say. Okay. Right. So you're going to see how I did this bow, and I'm like really proud of myself. Really simple, which is totally my way, but like super effective. All right. I had the best of intentions with this wrap part, whatever you call this. The blue had not fully crusted, I swear. I did the squiggle. I go in with my flood, and you're going to see after this crust that it cratered. It freaking cratered. I don't know why it cratered. I was so frustrated. I find with craters, I mean, I don't have the magic sauce. I have a bunch of things I can do to help prevent them, but I do not have 100% success rate. So take that as you will. Yeah. Okay. You're going to see, look, you can already see it starting to crater. Super frustrating. So I was going to leave this plain, like these little wrappy ribbon things, which are really wide. Why did I do that? I don't know. Seemed to work with the proportions of the cookie. You're going to see what I do to help mask my craters at the end. What is extra confusing is that these second pieces did not crater, but they went on top of an even drier surface. So that seems to contradict, the theory that you work with a barely dried flood underneath. I don't know, people. I don't know. I digress. Oh, this blue, I should note. So the light blue is it's the Americolor Royal Blue with a touch of yellow, like the tiniest bit of yellow. I think I just added some of my yellow icing because it's way more concentrated if you use out of the bottle. And that's because I didn't want it to be like a baby blue. So it's like just crossing over to green. I mean, it's not green, obviously, but like it's not a pure blue, which I love. So this was my solution for the bow top. I did my classic crackle. And to be totally honest, I waited a little too long for that crackle. I said my prayers as I was doing that because, whoo. All right. This here, look at this. This looks intentional, right? Like it looks like it's the way I designed this. Nope. This was a last minute addition because I panicked when I saw that crater and I was like, gosh, diggly darn it. I mean, I could have left it. Craters are not the end of the world, but I didn't want to have it. So I added the squiggle on top, which I actually think is a nice little texture addition, and it completely masks the crater. I mean, I love doing this kind of stuff. Okay. I am going to show you the flood on this because we're doing some fun stuff here. And just to show y'all how to flood in sections. That circle cutter that I used was too big, but it was the closest size I had to that circle, and I wanted to use it. I needed some sort of a guide. Now, one of the keys here is I'm starting and ending my circle at an intersection point. So the starts and the ends of my circles are never perfect. And I'm doing myself a service by starting and ending them at an intersection point, so it'll be less obvious. It'll be kind of masked by the intersection, if that makes sense. Okay. This yellow gold here, by the way, I would assume I started with the egg yellow, but I think I probably added like a little bit of old red icing or something. Just because I wanted a golden yellow and not like a yellow. Like this is approaching probably, this is heading towards orange. It's not orange, obviously. It's still very much yellow, but that's how you get kind of a golden yellow instead of like a yellow. All right, so we flooded this first section and we're going to let that crust, and then we're going to move over to flooding in sections. So you can see here I'm actually flooding up against the dried section, which is my favorite way to do flooding in sections. Another way to do it is to actually like use an outline pressure to actually put an outline next to the original or next to the dried section, if that makes any sense. I'm not making sense right now. I'm sorry. Can't show you with a visual. I don't like to do that because I like to do the flooding up and like, that's it. It's one and done. I don't really mess with it. Except you're probably going to see me mess with that little corner. Because the thing is, when you're flooding in sections, you don't want to get your scribe too close to the dried sections because you will really like mess with your beautiful seam. Now, obviously, if your icing is not touching, you need to use your scribe to get it all the way over there. But you can see here, I'm really trying to stay away from the seam as much as possible. And I did not do anything with that little corner. Okay. Now this here, I added the menorahs on top of, oh, this is gelt, by the way. Gelt. I think, I'm not going to try to say the origin, but I know that in current day, gelt is chocolate coins that are covered in gold. And I chose to add a menorah on these. I think that's the most common decoration, maybe, or one of them. Sometimes it's a dreidel. There might be others too. I'm ultimately going to paint this gold. Now, you might be asking, why did you bother making this yellow if you're just going to paint it gold? And that is because I use a completely edible gold paint or gold luster dust that I add the color solution to, or Everclear to paint with. And it's wonderful because it's completely edible, but it doesn't have the best coverage. So you do yourself a favor by flooding with a color that is close to what you are painting with. So if you're doing silver, be a good idea to do gray as your flood. And this is a soft peak here. So I'm just doing everything with a soft peak. So kind of, obviously with like that center section, I was jiggling it as I went and with the scribe to make sure that it's settled. Yay! Go me! I was very proud of myself. Okay. This is the same way that I did the little flames on the bigger menorah. This is obviously just a lot smaller. This is the same yellow that's in the latke. After I did this, I was like, I looked at pictures of gelt again. I was like, oh man, I should have made the menorah a lot smaller. Oh well. They're pretty. They're very, very pretty. You probably just heard me take a drink of water. This is one continuous recording. We're now on almost 30 minutes. Yay! All right. After I finish piping this, I'm going to let this crust nicely. Okay, you can see here, I tried to do a splatter first because I forgot that I really don't like how it looks when I paint large surfaces. I love painting small areas, and maybe I could have just painted the menorah. Actually, I'm just thinking about that right now. I could have just painted the menorah instead of the whole thing. But gelt is known as being shiny gold coins, so might as well roll with painting all of it gold. There's just something about this edible luster dust that it doesn't have, like, it's hard to explain, but I don't like to paint large surfaces. But I tried the splatter, and my roommate was like, yeah, no, the splatter's not doing it for me. So I went with it, painted the whole thing. Yay. All right, last but certainly not least is the Star of David. And I just went ahead and flooded the whole thing, obviously. 2 consistency outline and flood. Now, I'm just using an image from the internet. There are a lot of different ways you can execute, a Star of David. You could just do a very simple 2 overlapping triangles, but I really wanted to take this up a notch. And so this is a way that I've seen this done, where you can kind of like mimic the intertwined overlapping of the different sections. So I'm just painstakingly outlining everything right now with a soft peak piping consistency. This was when I was like, gosh darn, I really should have cut a smaller tip in my dark blue, but here we are. I definitely could have benefited from a more refined touch, but that's okay. We made it work. As always, make it work. The hardest part here definitely was, I think, I must have just, okay. Probably got something stuck in the bottom of my bag. This line here is the hardest part, because I was trying to not connect that line with the section next to it. And I just could never quite, like, get my eye right to make sure it was straight and not touching. Because obviously also, like, this image here I'm using is not the exact execution of what I ended up doing, which is fine. But I just kind of had to make it work. Oopsie, I think I had an air bubble there. Okay, this cookie took forever. Sometimes the simplest things take forever. Oh, you see that messy little end? It's okay, I survived. But all right, I did add the kind of quote-unquote squiggle here. I do believe that that light blue was pretty dried at this point. And then we're going to go in with this flood. What else can I say at this point? I've talked about the colors. Talked about the cutters. This is my PME scribe. That's that really small scribe I was talking about. When you do the squiggle, or whatever this is, I personally don't let the squiggle dry. I know some people that do, but my theory behind it is you want it all to dry together, and it kind of like marries together better instead of like sitting on top of each other, if that makes any sense. Definitely using my smallest scribe here because I'm working in a pretty small area. Sorry, I just got mesmerized by by my own piping. So something that we can talk about, especially this is reminding me of the menorah, because I'm piping that like dark blue on top of white, to help prevent color bleed, which could be very common in that situation. First of all, do not oversaturate your colors. The way you do that is you allow them to develop. So icing colors naturally get darker over time. So you want to color your icing to a few shades lighter than you ultimately need. Give it at least 30 minutes, an hour, or even overnight. I usually mix my colors to an initial color the day before, and then the morning of, I finesse them. My rule of thumb is that if the color is what you want in the bowl before you bag it, you've gone too far. It will continue to get darker as you decorate, as it dries. So you don't want it to be exactly what you want in the bowl, especially if you're going for a very, very light color. Those are super hard for me to do, I think for a lot of people, because it's so tempting to add more color. But use that rule of thumb. If it's exactly what you want in the bowl, you've gone too far. A good example is black. I always say it should be a very, very, very dark gray in the bowl. And then trust the process, especially if you colored it fresh and you're not letting it develop like just sitting in the bowl. Give it time, okay? So, yeah, so very, very dark gray in the bowl. There we go. Simple, effective, but actually very hard to execute well. And that is the whole set for Hanukkah. 8 different designs. Completely obsessed with like the simplicity, but the finesse, the execution. I'm so proud of this one. Yeah, the latke is probably my favorite. I love that menorah though. And the dreidel. I mean, so many good things. So hope y'all learned a thing or two. Maybe we'll even try these yourself. Okay, I'm out. Have a sweet one.